environmental GST audit. Before starting the session, there are a couple of announcements. We are having a webinar on 13th March, that is Saturday, 6 to 8 p.m. The topic is meeting on meeting on art of drafting of deeds and documents. This will be taken by CA Bharat Popat, a very senior most, and he is from Ahmedabad. And next on 14th, we had a meeting on caution to be taken in cash transactions. It will be taken by CA Ashok Kumar Jain, FCA from Jaipur. And on same day, other topic will be an insight into the taxation of cooperative housing society and issues involved, which will be taken by CA Sergeant TT from Kerala. So now for today's program, we had our guest speaker, CA Radhika Verma ji. She is from Hyderabad. Before starting this, we welcome our guest chairman, WRC chairman CA Manish Gadia ji. I request CA Manish Gadia ji kindly have your insight.
Thank you, Amish, for inviting me here. And Amish started saying that guest chairman. I will correct that. I will never be a chairman at Andheri Oshiwara Study Circle. Always I feel that this is my own study circle. And every year I am visiting this study circle, and study circle ने मुझे जो प्यार दिया है और जो respect दिया है, I can't forget. And that's why after resuming office of WIRC chairman, my first visit, maybe virtual or physical, to any study circle is Andheri Oshiwara Study Circle.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Amish, for giving me this opportunity, and thank all the members of the study circle for showing faith in me. So today, this year, we are working on a theme in WIRC, bold. The meaning of bold is B means brace the change. So today we are at members of our study, our fraternity need to change everything. The thing which is constant in this world is change. And Radhika Verma madam is here to guide us. And we have seen that in this budget, government has said that GST audit is not required to be certified. Form 9C is not required to be certified by chartered accountant. Of course, institute is working on the same. What will be the outcome, we don't know as of today. But the message from this budget is clear that the members should move from compliance-based practice to value addition practice, which is very, very, very important. So as a chartered accountant, we are capable enough to give a business consultancy, how to grow business, all this kind of consultancy to the client, and we should focus on that only. So this change is required to be done as far as our thinking process is concerned, our practice pattern is concerned, and everything. Apart, after they doing this, the next thing is to organize ourselves. We should organize not only our office, not only the resources, not only the infrastructure, not our skill set, everything we need to organize. And after organizing this, what is the next thing is to learn. And what we have seen that Andheri Oshiwara Study Circle is doing fantastic work under the convenership of Amish Sangoi, and I have observed that he is bringing the best of the faculties and the different kind of topics throughout the years. And I know that Deepak is going to continue with the same trend in future also. So learning is very important, and after learning, the best thing what we can do is to deliver the best quality service. This is what the expectation of the department, not only department, but the client, all the stakeholder, government, everything. So as a chartered accountant, we have to give a value added service with a good quality deliverables. With these few words, thank you very much. Over to you, Amish.
Thank you, Manish sir. Yesterday we met at the president office with you. I know your schedule was very busy, very busy. Then also you tried to take out some time for the Andheri Oshira Study Circle members, and obviously you are not a guest here, and you are a part of our family member only. So I thanks once again you for accepting our invitation and taking your time. Now, not wasting much time, I request CA Nikhil Porwalji to introduce the today's our learned speaker for an important topic. Over to Nikhil ji.
Thank you, Amish, and welcome to Manish ji once again from all of us. Um, as regarding our speaker today, Radhika, she possesses a decade of experience in handling indirect tax-related matters. Her professional stint also includes working with one of the big four consulting firms. She is an ardent speaker on the subject of indirect tax, is the only woman who is accredited trainer from the National Academy of Indirect Taxes and Customs and Narcotics, which is the NACIN, the training wing of the Government of India on indirect taxes from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. She has been entrusted with a variety of assignments in indirect taxes, and she has been actively involved in implementing of the GST for various multinational companies in India and in the VAT regime of the UAE, which has been recently introduced. She is a faculty on the indirect tax for ICI in India in the Dubai chapter. With these few words, I welcome Ms. Radhika Verma to take up the session today. And thank you for giving us the time and coming today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikhilji, for the warm introduction. I would at the outset like to thank the Andheri Oshibara CP Study Circle of WIRC and Amish Sangoiji for this invitation. It's indeed a pleasure to be speaking on the same topic within a short span of time, and which is so dear to me, Department GST audits and the appeals. Before I commence my presentation, I would also like to congratulate Manish Garia ji for the chairmanship of WIRC. And sir, it was indeed a pleasure to be speaking with you last year. But that time we were talking on the GST audit by the chartered accountants. The difference today is I'm going to talk about the departmental GST audit and appeals. So thank you, Manish ji and Amish ji, for this opportunity. And without taking much of your time, let us get straight into the presentation. Is my presentation visible, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Great. I'd also like to thank all the participants to taking out time on Sunday morning for a topic, in GST, which is one of the most evolving, ever-changing law which we've seen in the recent past. And I would try my best to make justice to the about 120 minutes of the time which you'll be giving me on a Sunday morning. I'll try my best. Yeah. Now, just one moment. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So basically audit, the term audit has been defined under the GST law. In fact, this was one of the most worrisome point for me when I was talking about the GST audit by chartered accountants, because although the trade notice and the circulars did mention that the audit by a chartered accountant has to only be reconciliation of turnovers and not much is expected in terms of examining in detail about the applicability of various provisions, exemptions, etc. But that was still a worrisome point then, because the act clearly said that audit means the examination of records, returns, other documents maintained or furnished by the registered person under this act or the rules made thereunder for the time being enforced to verify the correctness of the turnover declared, taxes paid, refund claimed, input tax credit availed, and to assess his compliance with the provisions of this act or the rules made thereunder. So the term audit has been defined in a very broad manner under section 2 subsection 13 of the CGST Act to say that you have to verify the correctness of the turnover declared, you have to verify the correctness of the taxes paid, you have to verify the correctness of the refund claim. So you will have to read the word verify the correctness which each of those words, and therefore you are no longer giving a true and fair view when you talk about audit. But then right now, as we speak, we understand that the audit by the chartered accountants under 35(5) has been done away with by the government in this budget. Indeed, ICAI is putting its efforts to revive back that for the chartered accountants. But nevertheless, there is always a silver lining, as they say. So the silver lining here is that basically you can do the same or similar value add to the clients as you were doing in a GST audit, or in a much more comprehensive manner, by virtue of health check services. So in fact, you would be doing this on behalf of the management. So therefore, the management would be more than willing to listen to your suggestions than it was in case of GST audit, which was being done on account of compulsion by the act. So therefore, that is what I feel is the silver lining in this entire process. But nevertheless, if the audit under the GST by chartered accountants gets revived back and comes back, it'd be a fantastic opportunity for us to continue what we have learned, what we have put in efforts for over the last couple of years. Now, coming to the departmental GST audit, there are two forms of audit by the departments. One is the audit by the tax authorities under Section 65, and the other is the special audit. So these are the two forms of departmental audits which exist under the GST law. Hitherto, if you look at the previous earlier provisions under the service tax regime or under the central excise regime, in addition to this, you would also have an audit provision by C&AG. But as of now, there is no mechanism or no provisions wherein a C&AG can directly audit an assessee. It can do the audit of the department. It can do the audit of the orders passed by the department, the audits concluded by the department, and give its observations, which can be taken by way of a revision in the orders by the revisional authority. But otherwise, C&AG per se to read the act and the rules as such does not have a direct right to do the audit of the assessee. So therefore, at least this curtails down to say that you can be audited only by the tax authorities under the GST or by virtue of a special audit. Now, Section 35, which is audit by the tax authorities, what does it say? It says that the commissioner or any officer authorized by him by way of a general order or a specific order. So that means a general order which would say that, okay, we are going to do the audit of these assessees who satisfy this criteria for this period, or a specific order that an audit of this particular assessee has to be done, may be given, may undertake an audit of any registered person for such period at such frequency and in such manner as may be prescribed. Now, one important thing for us to note here is that the audit by the tax authorities can be taken only in case of any registered person. So therefore, if a person was not registered under the GST law, then he cannot be subjected to audit by the tax authorities under Section 65, but the proceedings can be initiated by them by the anti-evasion wing of the department or the Director General of the Intelligence under the GST, but not by the Audit Commissionerate of the GST. Now, the audit can be conducted for financial year, it can be conducted for the part of the financial year, or it can be conducted for the multiple financial years at one go. So it is possible that you may be audited for a part, multiple, or a financial year, depending on case to case. So right now, if you look at the scenario in Hyderabad, where I belong to, the audits are being taken up for 17-18 and 18-19 jointly. So these 2 years put together, they are conducting joint audits of multiple periods for assessees, the Audit Commissionerate. Now, at such frequency, so therefore, what does it mean at such frequency? Frequency here means that you can be audited once in 3 years, you can be audited once in 2 years, you can be audited once every year. So there is no determined fixed frequency. So you cannot say that if you audited me for 17-18, you cannot audit me for another at least 3 years or something like that. So the frequency is totally dependent on the audit officers. and in such manner as may be prescribed. So the manner in which the audit has to be conducted has been prescribed in the section 65 along with the rules, CGST rules, which you can read. Now, what are the prerequisites of the audit by the tax authorities? The audit can be conducted at the place of business of the assessee or in their office. So these are the hard learnings which has come to the department out of the service tax regime, where you had multiple places where the audit by the department was challenged before the high courts, whether it was mega cabs, travel light. In all these cases, whether the department is entitled to audit under Rule 5A of the erstwhile service tax rules was challenged. And the high courts did hold, especially the Delhi High Court held that the audit provisions under the erstwhile Finance Act was not valid and therefore had to be struck down. So out of all those learnings have culminated these provisions, which say that an audit can be conducted at the place of business of the assessee or in their office. The registered person shall be informed by way of a notice not less than 15 working days prior to the conduct of the audit. So therefore, a minimum 15 working days intimation has to be given to the auditee before the commencement of the audit. The audit should be completed. So the word used here are shall. So the audit shall be completed within a period of 3 months from the date of commencement of audit, which makes it mandatory on the part of the department audit team to complete the audit within a period of 3 months. Now, what do you mean from the date of commencement of audit? Now, the commencement of audit shall mean the date on which the records and other documents called for by the tax authorities are made available by the registered person or actual institution of audit at the place of business, whichever is later. So therefore, the audit has to be concluded within 3 months from the commencement of the audit, and commencement of the audit is date on which you make available all the records in the documents or the actual visit by them at your place of business, whichever is later. Now, such period of 3 months can be further extended by 6 months by the commissioner for reasons to be recorded in writing. Now, at certain times, it is not possible for one to actually conclude the audit within a period of 3 months. So therefore, you have 3 plus 6, 9 months within which the audit by the tax authorities needs to be concluded from the date of commencement of the audit. Now, what are the steps to the GST audit by the tax authorities? The proper officer shall issue in form GST ADT 01. So he shall issue a notice, which I told you a little while ago, that a minimum of 15 working days has to be given from the intimation of the audit. So therefore, from the date on which you receive this form GST ADT 01, there must be a minimum gap of 15 days for the commencement of the audit. The proper officer may inform the registered person of the discrepancies noticed. So therefore, there is no specific requirement of the law that the proper officer shall inform the registered person of the discrepancies noticed. So these are not given in the provisions of the law, but these are certain principles followed by the department based on the internal guidelines issued to them. So therefore, there is an interim form called Form GST ADT 01A, which the audit manual issued by the department asks the officers to follow to issue, to give the discrepancies, whatever have been noticed during the audit. Upon conclusion, the proper officer shall inform the registered person the findings of the audit in Form GST ADT 02. So whatever are the final findings which are there, which have been approved by the MMC committee of the department, are finally communicated to the assessee in form of a final audit report, which is a Form GST ADT 02. Now, what are the responsibilities of the assessee under Section 65? So all this while we were talking about what the department auditors should do, in what time period they must conclude the audit, what are the forms in which they need to communicate with the assessees, etc. But what are the responsibilities what the assessee should shoulder as per Section 65? As per the said section, the officer, the proper officer must be provided with the necessary facility to verify the books of accounts or other documents as he may require, to furnish such information as the proper officer may require, and render assistance for timely completion of the audit. So therefore, earlier there was a lot of issues with regards to why should SSEs, provide these facilities to the departmental officer. They should go and verify whatever they want at their premises. So now the section 65, that is the statute itself, puts conditions upon what are the responsibilities of the SSE. And therefore, it is expected that a proper timely completion of audit, proper communication with the officer, and to verify the books of accounts, the necessary facilities, all this must be given by the assessees. Access to the business premises under section 71. Any officer under this act authorized by the proper officer, not below the rank of joint commissioner, shall have access to any place of business of registered person to inspect books of accounts, documents, computers, computer programs, computer software, whether installed in computer, and such other things as he may require, which may be available at such place for the purpose of carrying out any audit, scrutiny, verification, and checks as may be necessary to safeguard the interest of the revenue. So therefore, you will have to read section 65 and section 71 in a co-joint reading. When you read this jointly, you also understand that when you say the necessary facility to verify the books of accounts, that means that the officer may or shall be given the access to inspect the books of accounts or documents or the computers which are there at the business premises. So therefore, the powers available to the department under the GST Act are more comprehensive than the erstwhile laws of VAT, of service tax, of excise, because all of this has been made from a cumulative learning which has happened under the erstwhile regime. Now, this is the format of form GST ADT 01, where you would normally find that this is the way the notice is being issued for conducting of the audit. So they are saying that it has been decided to undertake the audit of the books of accounts for the financial years dash to dash. So as I told you that there can be multiple financial years or there can be a part of the financial year as the case may be under section 65. I propose to conduct the audit at my office or at your place of business. So whatever is the option, that has to be communicated by the audit officer at the time of giving the form GST ADT 01. Though strictly not 100% of this format is being followed by the department, but yes, this is the format which has been prescribed under the CGST rules. Now, thereafter form GST ADT 02 is the audit report which has to be issued under section 65 subsection 6. So after the entire audit is completed, you have to issue this audit report which specifies what is the total short payment of tax, under which heads, and what is the interest and the penalty liabilities. Not strictly, at least in Hyderabad, I've seen these formats being followed. There is some amount of distortion in the formats. The legacy regimes formats are being carried over, a final audit report, etc. And most of the cases, though assessment is what is not covered in this topic today, but most of the cases what we found when the GST audit is being conducted by the department, they are issuing, they are contemplating section 74 for the purposes of issuing a demand and recovery under the GST law, more so because unlike the erstwhile regime, where had you issued a notice to a client or an assessee, under section proviso to section 73 of the Finance Act. What was that proviso to section 73 of the Finance Act was the cases of suppression, willful misstatement, fraud, collusions. So if you had issued a notice to the assessee under the proviso to section 73, and subsequently the courts held that there was no suppression, no misstatement of fact, there was no fraud, it was just an error or in clerical error, or it was error in interpretation of the provisions, then in that case, the entire liability would have been struck down. So again, from that learning, what the government has done, it has put in a provisions under the GST law that tomorrow, if it is held that the notice is not a valid notice because there is no suppression, fraud, collusion, misstatement, then at least to the normal period of limitation, the demand will still sustain on the merit points, leaving aside the technical point of limitation. So therefore, what I'm trying to tell you is that since the option is available to the department, as you know very much that normal period of limitation is not yet over. The first audit which was concluded was only in February of 2020. So they still have 3 years time from there to conclude the GST audit. So we are talking about 2022, 2023. We are talking about 2023, till which they have time, 3 years, to issue a demand under the normal period of limitation. Then why that you have normal period of limitation and you're still issuing under the extended period of limitation? That is because the penalties under these extended period of limitation are much more wider when compared to those in normal period of limitation, and that the law now very much covers that if you fail on the technical ground of limitation, the normal period of limitation demand is going to sustain. You would find that by and large, the entire audit which is being done by department, the issues are being raised under section 74 and not under section 73. So accordingly, conscious calls have to be taken when you put forth, or you represent a client before the audit department or the audit officers, to ensure that the demand, if any, should not be covered under section 74, where there was no case of fraud, collusion, or misstatement. I'll talk more about this as we proceed further. But now let me talk about the Director General of Audit, the DG audit. So basically the GST department has a separate wing for GST audit, which is headed by the GST audit, DG audit. And this DG audit has basically made out the entire plan, manuals for the GST audit by the departments. Now, one such communication by the Director General Audit in June 2019 categorized the taxpayers and and gave guidance in terms of what audits have to be done during the period and by whom. So a large taxpayer is one who is above 40 crores. A medium taxpayers is one which is 10 to 40 crores and 7.5 to 30 crores depending on the area or the city. So tier 1 city 10 to 40 and the tier 2 city 7.5 to 30 crores. Small taxpayers are those having turnover of 7.5 crores to 10 crores. So in this categorization of the taxpayers, you would find that the number of audits which have been issued for the region Mumbai, since we are talking at the WIRC, let us look at Mumbai. There are total number of audits which have been picked up for 2019-20 was 1296 of large taxpayers, 1350 of medium taxpayers, and 1494 of the small taxpayers. You would still agree that the percentage of assessees which are being covered by the DG audit plan is still minuscule when you compare with the number of registrations which you would have in a city like Mumbai. So therefore, that means that each and every year, by the turn, by the cycles, the department is going to try and cover as many audits as possible. So this is one point. If I were to now put forth why GST audit by chartered accountant was important. So the GST audit by chartered accountant obviously was important because it's not possible, keeping the size of the taxpayers under the GST, for department to audit each and every single one of them. So actually the GST audit by chartered accountants was indeed complementing the audit by the GST department, and it was not competing with it. So that is what my humble opinion here would be. Now moving further, now assuming that, once the number of audits has been decided by the commissionerates, what do they do? So what they do, if you see on the right hand side, I've given an example, say in Indore, the total number of audits which have been allocated for large is 216. And the total audit groups which will take care of these 216 audits would be 6 audit groups. So normally an audit group would comprise of an assistant commissioner, a superintendent, and 2 inspectors, something like that. So 6 of such groups are going to take care of 216 large taxpayers, which means you can imagine the number of days it's going to take them to complete the audit. Because at least the large taxpayer, you have to spend about 7 days. So 7 days into 216, divided by 6. So you can imagine how much time each of the audit groups would have. Similarly, the medium number of audits, 250, and the audit groups assigned are 5. The total number of audit groups are 16. In Bhopal, it is 30. Raipur, it is 30. So everywhere they have streamlined the number of total number of audit groups and total number of audits to be done by those audit groups. Now there is this manual by the GST department, which is the GST audit manual. You can find it on the net if you search GST AM 2019. So GST audit manual 2019, issued by the Director General of the Audit. Now this manual broadly lays down the objectives and the principles of the audit by the department, the management of the GST audit, selections of the registered persons, preparation and verification for the audit, and preparation of audit report and follow-up. So basically it is kind of an handbook given to the GST department by the Director General of Audit for conduct of the audit, similar to what we had from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India when we were doing the GST audit under section 35 subsection 5. So it's a kind of a very comprehensive manual which will also give us as chartered accountants to understand what is that the department is looking for, what kind of analysis they're going to do when they come for GST audit. Have we done something similar to that when we are providing value added services, advisory services, consultancy services to our clients? Have we done in line with that, or are we deviating a lot from what is specified in that manual? So that can be kind of an introspection opportunity for each one of us to see where we are headed to. Now, I'm not sure if this is very clearly visible to you, but I'll just read it out to you. The various, this is the important thing, because this is the entire process flow, top to bottom, of the stage-wise plan by the department, how the department is basically planning. So basically the entire planning starts at the DG audit office, okay, wherein the risk assessment of taxpayers and calculation of risk scores by risk score engine. So there is a fantastic tool which has been developed by the GST department. And in the subsequent slide, which I will take you through, I will show you as to what are the risk parameters. So based on that, risk assessment of the taxpayers is done. The units are selected for the audit. The selection criteria is based on the risk parameters for that year. So each year the risk parameters would be different, and based on the risk parameters, the units would be selected. Allocate the audit task list to the commissionerates based on CDR mapping. So after, from the entire database of the GST SSEs, the registered persons, from the entire database, what happens basically is, after segregating the assessees which have high risk scores, those are allocated to the audit commissionerate. So say Mumbai audit commissionerate, Hyderabad audit commissionerate, Bangalore audit commissionerate, it is allocated to them. Now, then starts the role of the audit commissionerate. So what does audit commissionerate do? Allocates the audit task list to circles or groups based on the CDR mapping. So the audit commissionerate, once it receives the list of audit to be conducted from the DG audit office, allocates it to the audit circle, which needs to do the audit for those particular assessees. Once the audit circle gets the audit list based on the CDR mapping, it allocates it further to the groups. So audit commissionerate allocates it to the audit circle further allocates it to the audit groups, which we saw a little while ago. Now, group meaning which, so a circle would have an ACDC, and then the subgroups would have, like I told you, superintendents and the inspectors. So select a unit from the list of the audit, send intimation to the unit under GST ADT 01, Start the audit activity, prepare working papers, do desk review, calculate financial ratios with the help of the latest forms, then send intimation to the unit on the audit findings, which I was telling you is not prescribed under the GST rules, but is prescribed in this manual, which says that you need to prescribe it under GST or ADT 1A. So send intimation to unit on audit findings under GST ADT 1A. Update the unit's replies, consent, objection to findings under GST ADT 1B. Update the draft audit report in form of paras created for each finding objection, record status of each para, whether accepted, not accepted, realization, on-spot realization done. Update the final audit report after the MCM meeting, record the status of each para with the remarks, comments of the MCM committee, and then what happens? Para is closed. Yes, then end. So para closed, when can it happen? Para closed where the assessee has accepted the demand, made the payment, then the para is closed. Or the department has accepted that the para should be dropped and should not be pursued further, then the para is closed. Otherwise, it is case referred to DSR module for issuance of the show cause notice. Now this place between these two is what is a striking change under the GST law when you compare it with the erstwhile law, because earlier, based on whatever the audit findings or objections were, the final audit report would be sent to the range office. So your range offices would receive communications directly from the audit department that, look, we have completed the final audit of this assessee, and now you can go ahead.
Yeah, disconnected. डिस्कनेक्ट हो गए मैम.
Records audited by the said chartered accountant oblique cost accountant, right? And ADT 04, information of findings upon special audit. Your books of accounts were audited. Your books of accounts and records for the financial year have been examined by so-and-so chartered accountant, and the audit report is prepared on the basis of information available furnished by you, and discrepancies are as under. Upload the PDF file containing audit observation. So this is the form GST ADT 04, which needs to be issued after the conclusion of the audit by the chartered accountant. Right. Now moving on to, so I hope with this, the department GST audit provisions are clear. Two forms of audit: audit by tax authorities and special audit. Section 65 and section 66. We looked into the GST audit manual issued by Director General of the Audit. We looked into the four forms: GST ADT 01, ADT 02, ADT 03, and ADT 04. Now, with these in mind, we will now move on to understand the appeals and the revision provisions under the GST law. We have not included the assessment here because the assessment by itself is a very vast topic. And I would suggest, if I may, to the study circle, that you may take up a topic of assessment in the near future to complete the entire circle or the gamut of the assessments, appeals, revisions, audits under the GST law. Now, hierarchy of appeals under the GST. Let us look into the hierarchy of the appeals under the GST. So there are four levels of appeals under the GST law. One is before the first appellate authority. We look into who is the first appellate authority. Then the appeal before the appellate tribunal, High Court, and Supreme Court, right? So these are the 4 hierarchy of appeals under the GST law. So an appeal against the orders passed by the adjudicating authority, the appeal lies before the first appellate authority. So this is the first appeal level governed by section 107 of the GST law. An order is passed by the first appellate authority, the appeal would lie before appellate tribunal. This is the second level of appeal governed by the provisions of section 112 of the CGST Act. An order is passed by the appellate tribunal. The appeal may lie before the High Court or may lie before the Supreme Court. Where it lies before the High Court, the provisions are governed by section 117. And where the appellate tribunal national bench passes an order or the High Court passes an order, the appeal lies before the Supreme Court and is governed by section 118. So these are the 4 appeal mechanisms which are there in the GST law, and you may follow all the 4, or certain times the appeal may go directly to the Supreme Court, especially in the case of place of supply. Place of supply, it cannot go to any High Court, so it has to directly go to the Supreme Court. Appeals to the appellate authority, let us look into the first form of appeal. So the appeals to the appellate authority, who can appeal? Any person aggrieved by an order passed by the adjudicating authority in form GST APL 01. Any person aggrieved by an order passed by adjudicating authority. So if you remember, what did I say? The show cause notice will be issued by the audit commissionerate. You will represent it before the jurisdictional adjudicating authority, who may give you an opportunity, who shall give you an opportunity of being heard personally. This order is passed, then you appeal before the first level of appellate authority. And in which form do you file the appeal? You file the appeal in form GST APL 01. You can file this appeal online as well as offline currently. The time limit to apply, the time limit to make an appeal by a registered person is 3 months from the date of communication of the order. And if the department has to go for an appeal, then it is 6 months from the date of communication of the order. Extension or condemnation for filing an appeal, the appellate authority may allow an extension in filing an appeal up to a period of 1 month from the due date. So the condemnation can be allowed 3 months plus 1 month or 6 months plus 1 month. So the condemnation period under the GST law is only 1 month beyond the due date to file an appeal. Any additional grounds during the hearing is a discretion given to the appellate authority. So therefore, you have to be very, very careful when you are doing your form GST APL 01, because hitherto this was not specifically given in the law, and therefore by and large an additional grounds were being allowed by the appellate authority. But here a discretion is given to the appellate authority that if he is satisfied that the omission was not willful or unreasonable, he may allow that new ground. Otherwise, he may not allow a new ground of appeal which are not forming part of the appeal document in form GST APL 01. So you have to be very, very careful when you are drafting your grounds of appeal under the GST law. What is a pre-deposit which you have to make? So earlier pre-deposit was not required and each and every case would be heard. Depending on case to case, the stay would be given, stay would not be given, partial stay would be granted, all of those cases. But under the GST law, pre-deposit has been defined. The total amount of tax, interest, fine, penalty as per the order, which is admitted by the appellant, has to be paid 100%, whatever is admitted by you. Balance what is in dispute, 10% of the remaining tax in dispute, subject to a maximum of 25 crores, is the pre-deposit at the first appellate level. So 10%. 10% of the tax in dispute is the pre-deposit. Stay for unpaid amount, post the payment of pre-deposit, stay is deemed to be granted for balance amounts. A maximum of 3 adjournments can be provided to the parties in the appeal. The decision of the appellate authority should be in writing, shall be communicated to the parties in appeal, and if possible, be passed within 1 year from the date of filing. So it is not a mandatory, but a recommendatory provision given in the law that within 1 year of filing an appeal, the final order must be passed. An important thing which you must remember of the first appellate authority is that the first appellate authority cannot remand back the matters to the adjudicating authority. He can confirm, modify, or annul the decision, but he cannot refer back the case to the adjudicating authority that had passed such orders. Today, we find in the service tax regime, in the central excise regime, the GST, service tax appellate authorities do remand back the case to the jurisdictional office with the directions. So that is not being allowed strictly under the GST law as it is given in the statute itself. Now, one very, very important thing, I think this is very important, and I'm not sure if Manish Gadia ji is there, but if he is there, I would like to know his views on this provision which is there in the GST law. And any of you others are also, I'll be more than happy to listen to your views on this provision. Now look at the way the pre-deposits have been drafted under the GST regime and under the erstwhile law. So under the erstwhile law, I'm not reading or going through this table. I'll just go through what is written here. The Commissioner Appeals shall not entertain any appeal under Section 35, subsection 1, unless the appellant has deposited 75.5% of the duty in case where duty and penalty are in dispute, or 7.5% of the penalty where such penalty is in dispute in pursuance of the decision or order passed by an officer of the Central Excise lower in rank than the Principal Commissioner, Commissioner of Central Excise. Whereas under the GST law, the way it reads, sum equal to 10% of the remaining amount of tax in dispute arising from the said order in relation to which the appeal have been filed. So here penalty also was subject matter of pre-deposit. Here in case of penalty, pre-deposit has not been specifically mentioned. I am not sure if I'm misreading something in between the law, but this is one thing which you can do a more finer reading and understand what is the pre-deposit to be made. Whether it is 10% of the tax, whether it's 10% of the tax and penalty, in that case only tax, that is clear. If it's only a penalty order, then a pre-deposit is required. If it is an order where you are having a case because of interest, do you need to make the payment of the 10% of the disputed interest? Because I tell you where the issues are coming. In case of interest for irregular availment of credit, one is intending to pay the interest at 18%, whereas the department is demanding at 24%. So that is a area of contention, whether for the differential interest, are you required to make the pre-deposit or pre-deposit is done away with in those cases. Now, I was just telling you that the first appellate authority all this while, but who is the first level of appellate authority? If the order is passed by the deputy commissioner or the assistant commissioner or the superintendent, then the appeal lies before the JC appeals, joint commissioner appeals. If the order is passed by the additional commissioner or the joint commissioner, then the appeal lies before commissioner appeals. This is given under Rule 109A of the CGST rules. Now, moving quickly to the revisional authority. So, friends, by and large, the scope of litigation under GST seems to have been widened when compared to the erstwhile laws. We did not have the provisions of revisional authorities under the Central Excise or the service tax regime. It was common under the state VAT laws, though, but not a common practice under the Central Excise or the service tax regime for one to revise the order. There was no mechanism in which one can revise the order which was earlier passed. But under the GST law, even assuming that you've got a favorable order at the commissioner appeals level, but if the revisional authority finds that there is an error in the order which has been issued by the adjudicating authority, he may revise the original order. The revisional authority on the GST is the commissioner of the central tax, state tax, or the union territory. Scenarios for revision: order is found erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. So therefore, there cannot be a downward revision of the order. It can only be an upward revision of the demand because it has to be prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. It is illegal or improper or has not considered certain material facts or based on observations of CAG. So therefore, recently what has happened in Hyderabad, the CNAG has done the audit of the state department, GST department, and they have now issued the orders to us, asking us certain questions in relation to the refunds which have already been processed. And that is in pursuance of the observation of CNAG, where the CNAG observed that certain refunds have not been properly verified, they have not been enough documentation. So therefore, in those cases now are being taken by the revisional authority for passing a revision order. Revision order cannot be done in all cases, especially where the order is a subject matter of an appeal, or the time limit for filing an appeal has not yet expired, or 3 years from the date of passing of the order to be revised has elapsed. In that case, you cannot revise the order again. And having revised the order once, you cannot revise the order subsequently. The forms in which you need to serve the notice is form GST RVN 01. So wherein the revisional authority will tell you that, look, I am looking into your order, I am looking to revise your order, etc. He gives you an intimation. After that, he issues a summary order in form GST APL 04 along with the order which he wants to issue for the purpose of revision. So therefore, apart from appeals, you also have a revisional authority under the GST, and these are the various proceedings which can be taken up for revision, which cannot be taken up for the revision, and the manner in which the revision has to be done. Any person who's aggrieved by an order under section 108 by revisional authority should file an appeal before the appellate tribunal against such order. Because the revisional authority is the commissioner, you cannot now file an appeal before commissioner appeals. You have to directly go to the appellate tribunal against such order. So therefore, quickly summarizing what we discussed till now, we discussed about form APL 01, which is the form of appeal which you have to file before the first appellate authority. Then we discussed about form APL 03, which is the form of appeal to be followed by the department where it wants to file an appeal before the first appellate authority. Form APL 02 is the acknowledgement which you receive for filing an appeal. Form APL 04 we saw is the summary order which has to be issued by the revisional authority, right? Now moving on further to the appellate tribunal. The appellate tribunal basically have been divided in the following manner. There is a national bench of the tribunal, there is a regional bench of the tribunal, state bench and area bench. State bench basically would be at the capital of that particular state. Area bench could be in any other bigger city of that particular state. So you could have an area bench, say in Pune, Nagpur, etc. in Maharashtra. Similarly, you will have a state bench in Mumbai. You also will have a regional bench in Mumbai, and a national bench will be there in New Delhi. The place of supply matters would be taken up either by the national bench or the regional bench. The place of supply matters cannot be taken up by the state bench or the area bench. The form of appeal which you have to use is form GST APL 05. Again, you have 3 months from the date of communication of the order to file an appeal, and the department has 6 months from the date of communication of the order to file an appeal before the appellate tribunal. Where an appeal is filed by one of the parties, the memorandum of cross objections, the MOCO, has to be filed within 45 days from the receipt of the notice in form GST APL 06. So memorandum of cross objections has to be filed in form GST APL 06. The condonation in case of the appeal to be filed can be a further period of 3 months. So the registered person as well as department both get 3 months from the date last date to file an appeal. And in case of memorandum of cross objections, you get another period of 45 days for condonation. So 3 plus 3 or 6 plus 3 and 45 plus 45. That is how the condonation is before the appellate tribunal. In the first appellate case, we found the condonation period was only 1 month. The total pre-deposit. Now, surprisingly, the pre-deposit which is being asked in the GST law is very, very high. And therefore, this is actually to curb the number of appeals which will go to the appellate tribunal. The amount of pre-deposit is, we saw the total amount of admitted tax has to be paid by the appellant. And in addition to the 10% which you've already deposited at the first level, 20% of the remaining tax in dispute, subject to 50 crores, has to be made. So this emanated from the issues on the erstwhile law that if you see here, earlier it was 7.5% and then 10%. So the question was, after 7.5, you will make another 2.5 or you will make 7.5 and 10, total 17.5. This was a subject matter of huge appeal. And finally, it was clarified that you have to make 7.5% pre-deposit at the first level and only balance 2.5% at the second level, a total of 10% of the pre-deposit. To overcome that, under the GST law, it is being clearly specified that 10% at the first appellate authority level and 20% at the second appellate authority or the appellate tribunal level has to be made. And post the payment, the balance amount is stayed. No more than 3 adjournments can be provided. Again, the tribunal should pass an order within 1 year wherever possible. And it may amend the order passed by it within 3 months due to an error apparent on record. That is, the rectification of order can be done within 3 months from the date on which the order is filed, order is given. There is a fee which is applicable if you want to file an appeal before the appellate tribunal, and that is ₹1,000 for every 1 lakh of rupees of tax or ITC or difference of tax or ITC or penalty, subject to a maximum of 25,000. So this is only under the CGST. So again, you will have another 1,000 under the SGST. So 1,000 plus 1,000, 2,000 for every 1 lakh rupees if you look at the cost to file an appeal, and maximum of ₹50,000 on an overall basis. The appellate tribunal can, in addition to confirming, modifying, and annulling the decision, refer back the case to the adjudicating authority. Now, this is the difference. At the first appellate authority level, you could not send back the case to the adjudicating authority. You cannot remand it back. But in case of appellate tribunal, the case can be referred back to the adjudicating authority or to the revisional authority who has passed the order. Now, one important thing, while we discuss so much about the appellate tribunal, I'm sure some of you would know that the tribunal today under the GST is not functional. The tribunal has not been appointed due to an issue before the Madras High Court, a writ petition was filed. And based on that, it was the formation of the appellate tribunal was stayed. So now presently there is no appellate tribunal. So therefore you do not have a second level of appeal. So alternatively, people are taking a ground that since no alternate remedy is available, I would go directly to the High Court. Now there lies the entire challenge, because can you go directly to the High Court? Will the High Court entertain your appeal or will it not? So these are some of the questions which are there, and it's not in all cases that the High Court would admit the matter. Currently, it is being said that the time limit to file an appeal before tribunal would be 2 dates: date of communication of the order on the date on which the president or the state president, as the case may be, takes or enters the office. So until then, you cannot file an appeal. So later of the 2 dates would be considered, and this has been issued by removal of difficulty order number 9 of 2019. Earlier, what happened, because there was no appellate tribunal, the first level of appeals was not giving an order. Because they said if we give an order, then you do not have time to, you may not have a tribunal where you can appeal to. So you will actually lose out because of that. So the department said that don't worry, even if the tribunal is not there, you continue to issue the orders. Whenever the tribunal is set up, from that day, the due date is going to be computed. So the date on which the president enters the office. So from there, your time limits of 3 months or 6 months would start. That is what basically this removal of difficulty order 9 of 2019 is stating. Interest on pre-deposit. Now this again, I found a very striking difference from the earlier provisions, but nevertheless, interest shall be payable from the date of payment of the amount till the date of refund at the rate specified. The rate specified is 6%. And if you have made an application and the refund has not been sanctioned within 60 days of that application, then 9% after the expiry of 60 days from the date of application for refund. So even from the date, if you win the case on the pre-deposit amount, you will get a 6% rate of interest, which given in today's market is better than the bank rate of interest in most cases. So, on a other side where the bank interest rate is higher, 6% seem to be low, but today the bank interests have come down. So 6% is decent enough. Nevertheless, the money gets blocked, the working capital gets blocked. So that amount of fund to be set right aside for the appeals is a conscious call which you must take along with your clients. Because if an adverse order is passed, you are unnecessarily blocking that fund for that period of time. So a conscious call must be taken because of the pre-deposits being so high under the GST regime. Now then you can go for an appeal before the High Court and finally appeal before the Supreme Court. Now, a person aggrieved by an order of the national bench or the regional bench will go to the Supreme Court directly because these are place of supply issues. So High Court does not have jurisdiction on place of supply matters as it involves more than one state. And person who's aggrieved by an order of the High Court, which is certified to be a fit case for an appeal before the Apex Court, can file an appeal before the Supreme Court. But one very important thing which you must note is that the sums due to be discharged. The sums due to the government needs to be discharged post the passing of the order by the national benches or the regional benches of the appellate tribunal, or an order passed by the state bench or the area bench of the appellate tribunal, or an order passed by the High Court, notwithstanding that an appeal is preferred after such order. So you got a case order which is not favorable to you at the tribunal level, you cannot go and get a stay at the High Court. You will have to first make the payments in order to file an appeal before the High Court. Otherwise, your appeal before the High Court would not be valid. Now, these are the provisions of the law. Time to come will say whether these provisions can be challenged. Can an assessee actually be curtailed of his right to file an appeal only because he needs to make the payment of the entire amount based on an order passed by the appellate tribunal or by the High Court when you move to the Supreme Court? In all those cases, whether you are required to mandatorily make the payment 100% of the sums due. It doesn't talk about tax due. Sums due means tax, interest, penalty. Everything of that sort needs to be paid before you proceed to a High Court. And therefore, I said I have my own views in terms of whether you can directly go to the High Court where the appellate tribunal is not formed. In all those cases, whether the High Court will ask you to make mandatory payment of the entire sums due, something which time only will tell us. As of now, I think the major cases which are going before the High Court are those of refunds. So that's not been a challenge in that case. The pre-deposit is not a challenge in that case. But yes, otherwise, Section 119 is curtailing your right to appeal before the High Court or the Supreme Court unless you make 100% of the deposit of the sums due. So with this, I think I've completed my presentation on department GST audits and the appeals. revision provisions under the GST law. Over to you, Amit ji or Deepak ji. Yes.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah.
And now I would request Manthan to take over the question and answers. Manthan.
Hello, Manthan is not there.
Okay, Manthan is not there.
No, he is not there actually. You can take Deepak.
Air conditioning equipment, very complex.
Amish,
Yes.
chat box, I'm not able to view the question answers actually.
That vendor, and therefore to price it at
Any questions which have been sent.
US. So
One
question
minute,
here
just
is,
let me check.
what happens here? Should separate embedded derivative in this case?
I think Deepak ji, some participants must be muted. Yeah.
The supplier is a related party of some ABC Limited, and the contract could not
So Puneet Gupta wants to speak actually. So Aditya, can you unmute Puneet Gupta? Aditya?
Just a minute, doing it. Just a minute.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, Puneet ji.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The question I have is that the 3-month, the due date that is, for the audit by the department, it says, from the date of submission of the information. Now the question is, what information? Is it the information that is asked in the first instance, or because you get a notice, it will ask you for 10 things, you submit 10 things, they'll ask you for 10 more, then you submit 10 more, they ask you for 10 more. So where does that timeline start? From the date of submission of the details provided in the initial notice, or when you have submitted all the details that have been always asked across the period?
Yeah. So basically, till the time all the documents which are asked by the tax authorities are made available by the registered person. So that is where the time limit for 3 months would end. And not only that, even after you've submitted all the documents and the department then decides to actually do an audit at your place of business, then whichever is later, from that date, 3 months would start. In fact, I have a case where the authorities have visited the office and they have concluded their audit, but it is more than 3 months and I have not received the audit notice. So I'm most likely assuming that the commissioner may condone it, citing COVID as one of the important reasons, and extended it by a further period of 6 months. So therefore, a total of 9 months would be available to the department to conclude the audit. Puneetji, I hope I was able to answer your question. So therefore, if you strictly follow 3 months, usse nahi hoga, because department bolega ki bhai abhi COVID के समय पे मैं कैसे audit को complete करूँ, and the commissioner will condone it for another period of 6 months.
Yeah, because we have seen that, when the first set of data is asked, you submit it in 15-20 days time, then you have another big list coming, then another big list coming. So that way the department takes 6-8 months, 9 months to keep asking for more and more information. So it basically is a never ending story.
Never ending. True. So although it appears that there is a safeguard measure put in the law, but I told you it is not very properly drafted, and I think law is going to get evolved. Like any other law, the GST law is new, and if time and again assessees challenge these kind of provisions before the High Court, it's only then that the law is going to get evolved further.
So the learning of other laws like service tax and VAT and excise, which is beneficial to the department, has been incorporated, but anything which was beneficial for the SSE has not been incorporated.
The less I talk about it, the better it is at this point of time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ma'am, the next question is from Mr. Galib Mirza, And his question is that whether the appeal will be in faceless mechanism or personal hearing will be there.
The faceless mechanism is not yet introduced under GST law. It is only being contemplated. It is going to not be faceless. It is going to be in person before the authorities. So I think the day faceless assessment would be introduced under GST, you can be doomed. I can say that, because even in face-to-face mechanisms, you still have a lot of. I do not have to shy away from seeing this fact that in an indirect tax law, the department is very much revenue biased, even at the appellate levels, at the first appellate levels. And therefore, if it is a faceless, then it's going to really be welcome doomsday. Yeah, that's how it's going to be. So right now, not faceless. That's the answer.
Okay, ma'am. Now I request Aditya that you please unmute Ghalib Mirza ji. He also have one more question actually.
Actually, I have already sent him a request. He is not unmuting as of now. Actually, I've
He's not
already.
unmuting.
Yeah, I've already. There could be some technical issue.
Okay.
And so one query I had whether when the revocation for application for revocation of cancellation of the GST has been rejected by the officer, so I have to file an appeal only. That's the only remedy I have.
Any particular reason why it has been rejected? Like?
He had asked details to be mentioned, details to submit for the interest since July 2017 to till date, and to deposit this if any difference is there, and file DRC 03. Actually, the date was given to us by the 15th of January to file the details, and we were also busy with tax audit and all audits. And on 16th or 17th, he has rejected the application. But actually, all our interest have been paid. We have paid all the interest, whatever it was there.
Yeah.
And the returns for October till October were also filed. The last date, which was the cancel, which it was cancelled effective 31st October. So we had filed the relevant returns also.
My personal experience has been that a lot of times these applications are not heard to properly and are not adhered to by the officers. So our application was also kept on hold in one of our cases for almost close to 4 to 5 months, and that was only an ISD registration. ISD registration, the question was why you have not filed 3BN1, and we constantly tried to explain the officer that this is an ISD registration, there is no 3BN1. So then we approached the commissioner and we were able to get a remedy to it. So I would suggest you can first try that route, and if that doesn't happen, but technically it's not an order which you can go against on appeal. But yes, if nothing happens, then you may have to file an appeal against it.
Okay.
Going to commissioner can also help. Yeah, can also help. The principal commissioner or the chief commissioner.
Appeal in APL 01 I can file. APL.
So therefore, that's what I was saying. Technically, an appeal under APL 01, I do not foresee it in this case for rejection of a revocation of order. But there is no alternate mechanism which I can see in this case. So you may have to file an appeal.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Amish, you want to ask any question? Amish, you have raised your hand.
No.
Okay. Now Punit Gupta ji has raised a question that what is the remedy for RFD 03? Is it only writ? Ma'am, are you there? Ma'am? Ma'am, are you there? Radhika madam?
Yeah, I'm there. Just one moment. My system is sort of some issue. Yeah. Hello?
Yes, madam.
Yeah.
So Ghalib, so madam, one question is that what is the remedy for RFD 03 from one of the members? What is the remedy for RFD 03? Is it only writ?
RFD 03, I mean, after, have you responded to the deficiency memo?
Puneet Gupta ji? Ha, yes. Yeah. Aditya, please unmute Puneet Gupta ji. Aditya?
Yeah, we have responded to RFD 03, but very smartly what the officer has done, he continued to issue RFD 03 on, frivolous grounds, or, even if though the details were filed, he has said that it is not filed and issued RFD 03 till the 2-year period was over. And then he has issued a show cause notice saying that your application is time barred, and then rejected the refund.
Okay. See, one option would be, because you've got a show cause notice, make a file a reply to that show cause notice and then go for an appeal mechanism. Because at least I think in your case, you should get justice at the first appellate authority itself, rather than at the cost of going to the High Court could be a little higher.
I
Especially
understand.
when a show cause notice has been issued, then you can reply to the show cause notice and then go for the first appellate authority. At
No,
least
that-
in few cases, in Hyderabad, we have had favorable judgments from the first appellate authority. Yeah.
That we have ultimately done. My issue is that when an officer is issuing RFD 03 without any logic, reason, or actually for something which does not really need an RFD, there is no deficiency. It's basically a matter of law. So using a matter of law as a RFD 03 excuse, then is there a remedy where I can go and object to that RFD 03 itself?
You can go proceed before the High Court, stating that these are the frivolous grounds which have been issued only to basically, ensure that you do not get your refund on time, etc.
So
You can do that. You can also approach the commissioner if you think that would help, and explain him that how you are facing the difficulties because of delay in processing of the refund claims.
okay,
Sometimes
thank
you
you.
stand strong before the department and put your foot down and make a representation to the commissioner, the principal commissioner, can help.
Okay, thank you.
Ghalib Mirza ji, you have a question? You can go ahead and ask.
Ma'am, actually, I have a question. In one of the departmental audit, the issues that we are facing, 2A and auto-populated ITC in table number 8A, there is a difference of approximately 3 lakhs. So under the departmental audit, department has agreed that they will not allow it, and they have forced an ICC using the coercive measure that he has to agree for it, and they have taken his sign on the exit interview letter. Now, subsequently, he talked to me about the same, and I suggested him that you should not pay the amount, and we will fight this case. So, do we have the remedy to file an appeal, or what should be the other way around?
Yeah. So it's a very unfortunate case, sir. In fact, if
Hello.
I'm not. Madam, are you there? Hello.
Actually, she got disconnected.
She got
Bandwidth problem.
disconnected. Yes, sir,
Bandwidth
there's a
problem.
network problem.
She will
Yes,
join
sir.
again.
Okay. Ma'am, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. So I'd like to bring before you this instance which has happened in Telangana. And what the State Department has done in Telangana is that it has actually taken a one of the softwares and done a 2A versus 3B difference between your table 8 for 17-18. Can we mute the other participants? So whatever is a 17-18 GSTR 9 you have filed, the difference in table number 8, that is the excess claimed over 2A, it has straight away issued a show cause notice. It has straight away issued a show cause notice and is asking you to appear before the officer and give the reasons. Now, what are the reasons that you're going to give? You would say that I have the copies of the invoices, etc. But their thing is that it is not there in 2A, so we are not going to allow it. So we have put forth before them that the provisions of 2A and the fact that you should take the credit only if it appears in 2A, etc., is only part of this budget finance bill. and it was not there earlier in section 16, and you could still take the credit of it. But the department is going based on the removal of difficulty order, which was issued in 2018-19, which said that if the credit appears in 2A, then you can take the credit by within an extended period up to March 2019. If you remember that circular, which had extended the date to March 2019, if the credit appeared in 2A. So based on that ground, they are proceeding and they are saying that that circular gave you the time to take it till March only if you had the credit auto-populating in 2A. So what we are now trying to tell them is that how do you know that when did this credit auto-populate? Did this auto-populate even before March, or did this not auto? I have taken this credit in the earlier return itself. So you are not very clear in which return have I taken this credit. So how can you proceed based on that circular? So the best remedy for a 2A versus 3B would be to go before the High Court, and in fact to go in batch of appeals, because to go for an appeal mechanism, you can look at the pre-deposit amount which you need to pay. The pre-deposit 10% at the first level and second level does not exist today. The appellate tribunal does not even exist. So therefore, you are talking about unending, timeline for this kind of a matter. So accordingly, the best thing would be to file a batch of appeals before the High Court, and in fact, maybe as associations, that would be the better option.
मैम इसके अंदर और एक सिनेरियो द इशू व्हिच अराइजिंग 2A and 8A the department is not understanding the logic about it.
Mirza ji, we are not able to hear your voice.
Yes. Ma'am, actually the logic behind the 2A and 8A department is not able to understand. GSTR 9 के अंदर जो 8A में ऑटो पॉपुलेट हो रहा है वो कभी कभी टेक्निकल ग्लिचेस की वजह से किसी डेट पे लॉक हो गया है मैम. तो भले ही 2A के अंदर दिख रहा हो लेकिन 8A में नहीं दिख रहा है, whereas the counterparty has filed the R1 before the due date itself. So we have even the proof at which date the R1 has been filed.
तो वो आप अपने शो कॉज नोटिस रिप्लाई में दे दीजिए सर, because sometimes there is a cutoff which is put for table 8. Like this time it was 31st of October 2020. So like that, there is a cutoff which is there in the table 8A. You can download the fresh 2A from the portal and tell that it is very much appearing in 2A. If that is your case, then you have a very fantastic case even at the first appellate level or even at the adjudicating level itself. But where it is not at all auto-populating in 2A, and those are major credits, then I think the only remedy is to go to the High Court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more questions from the members? Any more questions? So, ma'am, you have answered all the questions. Now we are we have to make certain 2 announcements. The one announcement is about the next meeting of our study circle, and that is on 13th March. And that meeting is from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening. And the topic is art of drafting of deeds and documents. And the speaker will be from Ahmedabad, CA Bharatji Popat. And I repeat, the meeting is from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the evening, and that is on Saturday. And the second announcement is the next meeting will be on 14th March, that is on Sunday, and that will be from 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And the topic will be caution to be taken in cash transactions. And the speaker will be CA Ashok Kumar Jain from Jaipur. And the next topic will be an insight into taxation of cooperative housing society and issues involved. And the speaker will be from Kerala, and his name is CA Shajan TT. So I request all the members to register in large numbers and take the benefit from learning. And finally, Radhika madam, and in the end, you have answered all the questions so patiently to all our members. And right from start itself, your process flow of departmental GST audit was fantastic, and that itself was elaborative, madam. And then you explained the risk parameters for the SSEs and various forms like ADT 3, ADT 4. And then you explained the entire process of appeals and revisions, then powers of revisional authority. And in the end, you answered all the questions so patiently. Thank you very much. ma'am, for coming on Sunday morning, investing your time and sharing your knowledge. And we are very grateful to you that you have come on our platform right from Hyderabad. And in future, we look forward to hear from you on our platform. And if you visit Mumbai, we look forward to meeting in you. And if we visit Hyderabad, we look forward to meeting you there, madam.
Most welcome.
Thank you very
most
much.
welcome,
I, Deepak
surely.
Madlecha, on behalf of Andheri Oshiwara Study Circle, propose a hearty vote of thanks to you, madam. Thank you very much.
Radhika madam, you will be sharing the PPT, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Because in the chat box, member are asking for the same.
I'll be
Thank you, ma'am.
sharing it. Sir. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you so
ma'am,
much.
for visiting. Thanks
you,
a lot.
sir.